Hello and welcome. This is our show, the podcast on Change 3 which is really about the quiet moment when you're going through a change and something that was disorienting turns meaningful. And today, the guest we have is Joan McGrael. And Joan, I am so excited to be talking to you for several reasons.
Thank you,
One is
Tina.
I love you as a human and have just been kind of along the journey, sometimes from afar, because we live across country now. You've always
Yeah.
inspired me with how you've gone through some pretty significant changes and you do it with such grace. And so when I thought of guests, you immediately came to mind as somebody that could share some wisdom on how you go through change in a meaningful way. And so
Thank you.
before we dive in, tell do share what you want to share about who you are, and what your role
Absolutely.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. And thank you so much for the invite and any opportunity to connect and talk with you is something I'd never pass up. So thank you very much. And certainly, I was ahead of this call, really preparing and considering what I might be able to share. So I'm really excited to dig into that with you. But my name is Joan McGrael. I hold a number of important roles. The first for me is always, will always be as a mom. I have the good fortune of having three daughters. They're grown now, but that is really has been the most important role for me. In addition to that, I am the CHRO for New Balance Athletics. We're a large global athletics company headquartered in Boston. And while I'm not officially representing myself or New Balance today in that capacity, Tina, it's such an important part of my life and such an important part of my learnings that there's no important conversation I have that doesn't include who I am professionally and New Balance specifically.
I bet that this is part of your secret sauce. You have this integrated identity. And so we'll lean into this more, right? Because I see that as a trend for people to navigate change. And so I asked you, and I'm not surprised you're prepared to think about a change. Before we go to that specific change and tell us about it, bring us back to the time that you were going through this change. Bring us back in time to who you were, what you were doing right before you went through this
Mm.
change.
Yeah, I'm happy to, Tina. And if you don't mind, I'll deviate just for a moment. As I was thinking about this call and I was preparing for the call, I thought about just in the last many years, if I start to catalog changes, what were some of the ones that came to mind for me as meaningful? And if you don't mind, I just want to take a minute to kind of cover off on some of those really quickly. One is that New Balance, where I mentioned I have the benefit of being employed, has benefited from double-digit growth in the last 5 years. Every year, double-digit growth year over year. And during that time, we have doubled our workforce. And so when you think about the change associated with that and the impact on people and the importance in my seat and for my department, that really kind of stood out as meaningful. I also thought about over the last many years navigating kind of the journey through aging as a woman to and through menopause. And holy smokes, what a ride. Yep. I thought a lot about my mom, who is well into her 80s now, and in the last couple of years in particular, how our relationship is shifting, the dynamic is shifting, given her need for something a little different, and just the importance of navigating that change with sensitivity and intention. I thought about for me as a mom, moving from being the mother of children to the mother of now adults, also kind of a big deal. And those were just some of the ones that came to mind for me. And I thought, it feels to me like my life has been a master class in
Yeah.
change. And it
Yeah.
also occurs to me that we could probably sit with most people at a certain life stage and beyond, and they could give you their own version of that,
100%.
right? It may look a little different, but it would be as varied as some of the things that I just talked about.
Yes.
So
So
if
true.
I if I get to your question more specifically, Tina, where you talk about, before the meaningful change that I kind of zoned in on, and we'll talk about a little bit more as I was preparing for the call. I would say prior to that change, things were like operating in a predictable routine and in a
Mhm.
way that in many parts was or in many ways, like a bit every day seemed like some version of the one prior, right? The most meaningful change in my life to date. And that was the loss of my partner and the father of my children. And that was suddenly and certainly um, tragically and left not only me, but my children, our family. Um, Thrown into such a state of chaos and grief. And it was a moment and have been years of moments of figuring out how to rebuild our lives together.
Can imagine, and I know we talked about this. So you're in this steady state, things are operating, and then boom, this happens. And you have to navigate it and deal with it.
Yeah.
Tell me about a little bit about what, as as you said, it's a journey, but what were some of the things that were helping you a bit through this change?
Yeah. I'll tell you, it was clear from the beginning that what would be in service to me and in my children in those early days was to really focus on what we needed most in a moment. It became almost overwhelming to consider what about next month and what about next year and what about when I go to college and what about the prom, and to think about what do we need today, maybe tomorrow, but really stay in the moment around what do we need most now and how can we support one another now. And for us as a family, for me, as and for all of us together as a family, we started to anchor around the next step. What is the next best step? And helping each other as we started to get a little further out. If we're getting a little further out and we're looking around corners in a way that's helpful, we supported each other through that. But honestly, in the early days, it was more about helping each other to stay grounded in the next strong, confident step.
So I'm like sort of speechless at your wisdom on this. How do you just make it really about the moment as opposed to going too far ahead? And I'm curious about like what helped you with that?
Yeah, it's a
Mm.
great question. I think what helped me with that was the realization that for me, anything beyond that had me operating in fear. And I knew to be a leader of my family, I knew in order to continue to show up at work as the professional that I needed to be, um, that I could not operate in fear. I love Brene Brown, and I know this is not her original, and she rightly gives credit, and I don't remember who it originates from, but she talks about being above the line and below the line. And what I was able to see pretty quickly is if I started to get too far out in those early days, I was quickly below the line. I was quickly operating from a place of overwhelm and fear. And so it just in that experience, I was able to help for me, but also see that that was very relevant for my daughters at the time.
Yeah.
And we
So it's
still
like,
use that today, Tina, in other aspects of our lives.
mm. So this above the line and below the line, it's like become a code word for you and your daughters about how to
Yes.
stay grounded and to know where you're at. It sounds like you'd have a read on where you are.
Yes, absolutely. And the idea that also in those times you can have like simple, common language or like things like we would say, what is the next best step? What is my next strong, confident step? Those small elements kind of gave us a way to come back to ourselves and each other.
Extraordinary, Joan. And so you. And I'm just like, my heart goes out to you as I'm thinking about, I hear you being a leader for your daughters, not a surprise. Who was there for you?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, during any time of major kind of crisis and turmoil, what you do find pretty quickly is you're able to do inventory on who is there. And there were many pleasant surprises in that, right? And that I realized, wow, we have the good fortune of a village around us. Um, and I will also say at that time, there were a couple of surprises on the other side of the spectrum that were eh, challenging to navigate and to work through. And each of us had a variation of that, right? And it's reasonable for sure that in times of significant turmoil and grief, not everybody has the opportunity, whether they want to or not. It's a hard thing to walk beside and sit beside people who are hurting. And so we had some kind of additional losses, if you will, during that time. But I did have the good fortune of some lifelong friends. Um, thank you. And I had the benefit of a unbelievably supportive boss and supportive company. Um, and I had the benefit of my mom being very present in my life in those early years. Um, and so I do feel so grateful to this day of all the support we received.
When I hear you describe this, this is a theme, a pattern that I hear people talk about, which is how do you be discerning in your community? Not
Yes,
because people are good or bad, but just kind of,
correct.
it sounds like you quickly learned these people can be helpful to us now. These people we need to kind of step back from. Is that right?
Yes, that is spot on. And I didn't anticipate that. And had I not had that experience, I don't think that's something I would understand to the extent that I do now.
Also, really struck by what you said about, and we had unexpected losses. Like you have this
Yes.
massive loss and then this other loss. So I'm curious about, like you just were talking about your mom, and it sounds so important how you said she was really present. What did that look like? I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. My mom was particularly good at just sitting beside us in the hard moments. And certainly she was amazing in that she was able to pick up kids from school when I was back at work, and she was able to, step in for things at the house. And there were all those things that you would expect. But what I appreciated more than anything was her willingness to just sit with us in the pain and not run from that, right? And she was obviously at a point then in her life where she was, well into her life's journey and um, had some really significant loss herself. And I think that experience allowed her to walk beside us as well. And it's just something that you never take for granted.
It
Yeah.
is so powerful, this ability to, what I hear you describing, to just bear witness, not
Yes.
intrude, allow you to have your pain, like to have your pain, to not try to
Yes.
solve it. That's what I'm kind of inferring from this. Yes. And
Yeah.
that
Absolutely.
that's such a gift to have
It
that.
certainly is. And it's so courageous on behalf of the people who are willing and able to do that.
Yeah. And I could hear you, can hear you, can feel the emotion, and I
Yes, to this
feeling it
day.
myself. Yeah, I can feel it. Like that's so legit. It's really quite beautiful and extraordinary. Like, of course, you didn't want to go through that experience. Oh, it sounds like that was another experience, right? To have that kind of love that was there for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to have someone who so firmly believed that we had what it took to get through it, to be stronger for it, right? I love the saying, borrow my belief. And when she sat with us, like we borrowed her belief because when we were questioning, she was not questioning. She saw the future so much clearer than we did about how we would stay together and we would stay strong and we would grow from. Um, and I truly borrowed her belief and it was life changing for me.
It's so powerful. So now kind of moving into, when did you move from having to kind of borrow her belief to believing more yourself? Like, what was the kind of point when you were like, okay, we're going to get on the other side of it somehow?
Yeah. Yeah, it was fascinating because I mentioned, prior to this, right? I think I didn't even realize the extent to which we were living a pretty ordinary and safe life. And one day rolls into the next, and you get up, you go to work, you do the thing, right? And this experience had me realize like there's a lot of opportunity for me to step outside of my comfort zone and to um, be able to be a leader, um, in some part informed by my own experience. And so this led me to pursuing, I have always been energized and inspired by the company of strong women, right? And like minded women. And so, um, I happened to stumble across this woman who was organizing trips for women. And the first trip that I went on was to the Grand Canyon. And it wasn't just like, let's go to the rim and take a photo. You went with a group of women, impressive as all heck, all of them. Spend a lifetime doing these amazing things. We hiked to the bottom of the canyon. We stayed for a couple of days. We hiked back up. I have what could be described as an irrational fear of heights. Why I picked that trip, I don't know. But the experience kind of brought me to my knees and up again, right? Even though when I left that day, I swore I'd never do another. Not that long after, I found myself kayaking in Alaska. And you know me from the days of like, please don't invite me to a picnic because I don't like bugs. I spent a week in a bug net camping on, islands, just setting up camp and the next day packing it all up and going to the next island. And like, I didn't even know this version of myself, but I knew that if I could continue to put myself out there, I could come to believe in a version of myself that I hadn't seen or experienced yet. And that would be in service to me, but as importantly in service to my daughters.
So what I'm hearing you say, and yes, I do have memories of you. Like I have in that memory of one of our dogs that came up to you. You're also afraid of dogs, put its paws on your shoulders. It was a big dog in all
A
fairness.
giant dog. Yes,
So that
I
you went,
recall.
that you went to the Grand Canyon is so extraordinary because I know about your fear of heights. And this element of what seemed to kind of hold you is pushing yourself further, finding this group of women and getting yourself to step beyond what you believed at the time. Sounded like you were
Yes,
kind of, yeah, giving yourself proof.
yes.
Is that right? Is that the way to say
I,
it? Like, I don't, you, yeah.
yes, I think that's right. I think that's right. Yeah. Like if I just, if almost, I can almost tie it back to what is the next strong confident step? I can almost tie it back to like, right? Like, I don't know. I believe that there's more. I believe that there's another version to be uncovered, right? So what's the next step? Um, and then as I did more of those things, then I came to see that adventure is part of my identity. I would
Mm.
never have said that
Mm.
prior.
so cool. So what you're saying is you were already starting to cultivate this belief through this practice that you have with your daughters of what's the next confidence step.
Hmm.
And by doing this, it built this momentum that then it was this belief of there is another version of me. There's
Yes.
another version of me. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to give myself some experiences. And so who you became is say more about this because you've
Yeah.
become, yeah.
Well, I certainly had more stories to tell. And I always appreciated that. I think honestly, Tina, it just broadened my perspective. And the idea that the broader your perspective, the more you can be in service to yourself and others. And when I think about what lights me up, personally and professionally, it is to do my best to light a path for others. And so the more that I was willing to expand my experience and therefore my perspective, the more I felt like I could offer to other people. It also, for me, really, this whole experience um, made so clear to me that we cannot begin to understand another person's perspective if we haven't experienced what they have, right? And there was something about and there's been something about since this event and through many others since, like, geez, I have been blind to what it is to walk this path, which means I'm also blind to a whole lot of paths I haven't walked. Imagine how much that matters as the head of people for a company that employs almost 15,000 people. You can't have a myopic view, right?
You can't knowing who you are. And what I hear in this story is this isn't just like getting through the grief stage. This is an integration, like an integration of this way of thinking and of being, of living. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it is. And while I certainly think it's not something I wish had ever happened. It's not something I wish that my children experienced and whatnot. There is no question in my mind. I am a better version of myself today than I would have been. I'm so clear on that. And I'm also not suggesting I don't have a lot I still need to work on every day, right? There's no arriving, but light years from where I was those many years ago.
Just sitting with us and just the wisdom of us, right? And this insight. Like what I'm taking away from this is you can go through a tragic experience and you can shift it so that it actually fuels your life in an unexpected way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm curious, spending some time talking about this. What are you taking away?
I think the reality is, for me, what I've come to understand is that change is everywhere, right? And some of it we choose. And even when we choose, it's hard, right? We choose to move or whatnot. And a lot of it we don't choose, right? But what we do have in the moment, regardless of whether we've, you know, chosen or been voluntold, I love voluntold, you still have choice in that. You still have opportunity to consider how you want to show up and respond. And it's hard. It's really hard, but there's power in that.
You found your power, your agency to do that. And this is not an easy change by any measure. And so to say that, and I can imagine that your daughters were changed through what you modeled. Like that's so that must feel like, I don't know, do you take that in? Like who what you've done for them?
Well, I like to the truth is they have been my inspiration. like to get up and to keep going and to make sure, I remember when my kids were young, I had at my desk a quote from um, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and it was something about if you bungle the raising of your children, I don't think whatever else you do really well in life matters very much. And I remember for some reason that just so resonated with me. And when Fran passed, I remember thinking, um, I will finish what we started. In fact, I not only thought it, I said that in his eulogy, and I repeated it to myself more often than I could count. I will finish what we started. And so, as much as I like to think that I was in some way a leader through the storm for them, the truth is it was really them, um, and their courage and their resilience and their willingness to um, power through. That's where my inspiration came from.
And I'm imagining that you received from that, like, continuously, right? This inspiration. And I'm also getting from you, like, you all were in it together, supporting each other.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And it wasn't easy. They were really, really hard moments in that because we were all grieving in our own ways and in different ways. And we all have different personalities and approaches. And so it was hard. It was messy. There were a lot of hard conversations, and there was a lot of, we had support around us in that way. But we were intentional in a commitment to be stronger as a result of. And we were very much aware. I was certainly very much aware to a greater extent, obviously, as the adult, like this could fracture and splinter. So we've got to work hard at finding our way together while honoring and respecting that that road is going to look different for each of us.
Having gone through this experience, what is it when you go to approach change now? What what's different for you? What do you take with you?
Yeah. What I take with me is the perspective of my own experience, but also the understanding that that doesn't mean it's going to be somebody else's, right? And grounding in that. What I take with me is such a desire to be the steadiest voice in times of change and potentially times of turmoil. What I also take with me, and this really comes from what we talked about with my mom, is I want to be someone that can sit beside and walk beside and have people borrow my belief when they're unsure. And I want not in a, I'll say it differently. I'd like in a humble, quiet way to show people that through my own experience that there is a way forward, that it is hard, but there is a way forward, and that even in the moments where we feel like things could never be right again, they absolutely can. There is hope, um, and there is always a way forward, and that matters so much to me now.
Beautiful, Joan. Thank you for sharing your story with us and for
Thank you.
bringing them in to so many people. And I love the weaving that you did inside the story of this sense of personal belief and power and how we can give that to each other.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Me too.